Hey, welcome to episode number 7 of our Between Sermons podcast as we are continuing the conversation from our sermon on Sunday. Now, you don't have to be a part of a church or even have listened to the sermon to get something out of the conversation that we're going to have today. But if you want to get more of this or you want to go a little bit deeper into the subject matter we're going to talk about today, there will be a link in the show notes for Sunday's message. We wrapped up a series called I'm Tired of This Place. And on Sunday, we really looked at being stuck in an emotional place, that you're just tired of feeling the way that you've been feeling. And so today I have a very special guest. Kristin Scott is with me.
Hello.
Welcome. So glad you're here.
To be here. Yes.
Yeah, so you're fairly new to the team. You've been around for about 6 months,
Yep,
not quite, maybe a little bit more, something like that, as our creative director. So usually you're not on this side of a camera,
I'm not.
usually on the other side, so hopefully you're not too nervous.
I'm not.
Good.
I'm okay.
So we're going to have a great conversation today about feelings, emotions, and I partially feel completely inadequate to have this conversation because admittedly my EQ was really, really low. It's been improving. I've been emphasizing it in my life. I'm working on that, but I wanted to have you on today because when we first met, I just got this sense from you that your EQ was pretty high. Would you agree with that, or am I off?
Explain EQ.
So emotional quotient. So it's quotient. So
Okay.
it's this idea of people have IQ and EQ.
Okay.
So somebody with a high EQ is somebody that can read a room really well, can process their own emotions really well, but even help others kind of identify. Okay, they said that because of this feeling, or this is what drove that. So.
Yes, I would agree.
Yeah.
That's definitely something I'm capable of doing. I when I think back just in my life, there have been times where I would say that I didn't have,
Yeah.
maybe let me say that I didn't have a good hold on my own.
Okay.
But I think as soon as I figured out my own
Okay.
emotions, counseling and talking things through and really digging deep, I was able to kind of manage that.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't take offense because this person is really, it's more of an emotional thing, something within versus it being like projected onto me. So, reading a room, that's one of my favorite things to do. Quiet, the quieter you are, the more you learn, you pick up on things in the room.
See, that's one of the things that I think connected us immediately is the fact that we're both pretty strong introverts.
Yeah.
And introverts, we are known for just watching. It's very, you absorb, you're just taking in.
Yeah.
You don't have to be interacting with everybody to be a part of it, because watching is being a part of it.
I'm a part of it.
There you go. But you said something already that I love that I wanted to highlight. You said, through counseling. And for some reason in the church setting for years, counseling was almost like a dirty word. Because I think, and maybe this is just my personal experience, but kind of came across a lot of Christians that were on one of two extremes when it comes to this mental health and emotional health conversation. And the two extremes would be like, what is it? Elsa in Frozen that says, conceal, don't feel. Right? So it's like the one side of it is we don't have emotions here. Like, we bottle that up. Jesus is Lord. God is good. And so I don't have to feel the feelings because I can just bottle that up, put that aside, focus on Jesus. And then there's kind of this other side that is like, I'm feeling all the feelings all the time. And, this is just who I am. And so you got to deal with my bad feelings. And it just kind of, both extremes are so unhealthy. But I feel like neither extreme really embraces the idea that, hey, there's a spiritual component to this, yes,
Definitely.
but there's also a physiological component to this.
Yeah.
And there's something that you do have to talk out, and having a counselor, having a therapist, having a doctor in your life that can help navigate some of that stuff, when you combine that with the Spirit of God,
Absolutely.
that's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. I remember when my father died back in May 2006.
Okay.
He was my absolute best friend.
Wow.
I don't believe in reincarnation, but I believe I am my father in the earth.
Okay.
It's like personality. I just look like
Twins.
a girl. Yeah, I just look like I'm the girl version of my dad. When I lost him, I experienced emotions within me that I had no idea that I could feel. And I didn't do any type of counseling or whatever. But I got into a relationship right after without really processing those emotions. And it was almost like I was looking for my dad again. And that marriage ended up, failing. And it wasn't until 2014. So there's an 8-year span, you know, at post-divorce when I finally decided to go into counseling. And like, I also kind of did it in private and secret, like you're saying, that there was this taboo thing. I remember being told by a church leader, that God will help my depression. True. Mm-hmm. He can. Yeah. But he's also gifted people in the medical field to help us.
Exactly.
With
Thank
our
you.
depression. Yeah. And so in 2014, when I did I went for divorce counseling, but it went all the way back to not taking care of grief. And I learned that I really struggle with authority and abandonment. And so now whenever I go into, I can't say that it's completely gone, but now when I go into a situation and I feel certain emotions, I'm like, okay, this isn't the other person.
Right.
This is something that I've identified within myself, that I just need to, you know, consider.
Yeah. Well, good for you for identifying it, recognizing it, and taking that step that you needed. Was there anything that was there somebody in your life that was like, hey, this would be good for you? Or was it just you woke up one day and you're like, I need to get some help?
It was twofold. So at the job that I was at the time, when I was getting divorced, they offered free. That was a part of like insurance. You can go to therapy for free. But the church that I was going to at the time, when I lived in Ohio, the pastor, you know, he mentioned it, and I could tell that he was really trying to pastor me and be there for me. But again, the whole authority thing I was pushing away. So I recognized like the love that was in him that was drawing me, but it was like this other little fight that I was kind of pushing back. So between those two things and people at work saying, hey, you know, take advantage of the counseling, I was able to, so it was twofold. So it was work and then also church leader, spiritual leader.
That's awesome. It's so vital to have the right people in your life that can encourage you into some things that maybe the rest of the world is a little bit more. It's more of a stigma. It's more of a, you know, kind of a taboo subject. But to be able to be in a place that's healthy enough to say, hey, no, this is real. And honestly, the idea that God only works in one way is so silly to me. Like, I mean, he's the creator of the universe. If he wants to use a doctor to bring healing to your life, that's just as valid as him just snapping his finger and molecules change and you're healed. Like, I think it works. I mean, it's a miracle either way, and it's the gift of God either way.
I think if we permit permit doctors to crack our chests open to restore a physical heart, and we trust them with that, that why can't we sit with somebody who has experience, says, hey, let's talk through your emotions or talk through your feelings. Let's see, maybe it is a chemical imbalance. Let's see what we can do to resolve this. Yeah.
No, that's brilliant. I love that analogy even of the medical doctor cracking open your chest, working on your physical heart. But having a professional that can work on your spiritual heart, your emotional heart, that can help in that area. I mean, when you've got a good medical doctor, you've got a good pastor, you got a good counselor, like you're set up for success. Like you've got somebody working on all of it. I love that. So on Sunday, one of the things that I really love that Pastor Chris did in the message was she brought out kind of all of these random examples of emotion and people in the Bible that are dealing with their emotions in different ways. And what's cool is that the Bible really is filled with real people. Like if the Bible was written by anybody other than God, everybody would be a superhero. Like everybody would be perfect. Nobody would ever have any problems, but it was God used real people. And what I love about that is that we get a glimpse into depression. We get a glimpse into jealousy. We get a glimpse into hatred and anger and all of the extreme emotions. We get to see it lived out in Scripture. And sometimes it's examples of the wrong way to do it. And sometimes it's examples of the right way to process through. And so kind of bringing all that up, I'm curious if you've got like a go-to. Like, is there a Bible verse or is there a Bible character that, like, when you think of emotional health, you're like, this is my example, or this is what I go to for encouragement?
I can't say that there's just one, but the one that comes to mind is Hannah.
Okay.
Samuel's mother. I just remember what she did, she took all of her emotions, all of her, everything that was in her, knowing that she, she wanted a child, and she took it. She's in the presence of the king. He thought she was drunk.
Yeah.
I have been in moments where all I could do was make noise and cry, at the king's feet, and for the king to respond.
Yeah.
And then of course she eventually had Samuel, but he granted a request. I think that I probably identify with that. Who else? I think David, of course. David was a mess all over, but he was a man after God's own heart.
Yep.
So,
which should tell you something about dealing with emotion and feelings and expressing all of that to God, not trying to hide it from God. I mean, why do we hide things from God anyways? It's like he kind of knows.
He did unthinkable stuff. Like this could only happen in the Bible. Somebody, people would be in prison if somebody did that nowadays. But for him to still have a heart after God, and for God to respond to that, not necessarily his actions, his feelings, but David always turned his heart back. His heart was postured towards God. Yeah. I think that if I can keep that in the form for myself, David's a...
Yeah, that one's mine. Honestly, and I'll boil it down to just the one verse where it says that David strengthened himself in the Lord. Like for me, anytime my emotions are getting into an unhealthy place, I think we'll put it, because no emotion is necessarily a bad emotion or a good emotion. They're just indicators of what's going on in your life and how you're processing. But we can allow emotions to get the better of us, and we can allow them to kind of run loose. And so I love what David did in that moment. He's feeling a lot of feelings. He's feeling betrayed. He's feeling angry. He's feeling heartbroken. He's afraid. He's just lost everything. His own men are turning on him. Like, I mean, as somebody that's in leadership, just the thought of the people that I'm trying to lead turning on me, and man, that's just he had to have been in a emotionally intense place. And it says that he strengthened himself in the Lord. And I want to have that posture that I don't need God to show up first. I'm going to go to him first.
Yeah.
And it's not that I'm going to sit around waiting for him to just make all of this better. I'm going to pursue him. And sometimes I just got to wake up in the morning and pull out my Bible and put on some worship music and strengthen myself in the Lord.
Absolutely.
Not to negate the need for counseling or anything else, but just to say, look, this is my starting point, and I want to get as close to God as I can. Because we kind of have flirted with this a little bit, but it's this idea that how do I articulate this? That feelings, I think the quote is, feelings make terrible servants, or terrible masters, but wonderful servants. And so it's the idea that your emotions, your feelings are supposed to be indicators for things in your life. But the moment we let them control us, the moment we let them be the master, that's when everything falls apart. That's when the danger is. Have you seen that in your own life? Have you seen that in people that you're leading or the people you're around, where it's like, oh man, I let that emotion take driver's seat?
Well, I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, so I'll always throw myself under the bus. If I look back at, I know this is probably just more so funny, but I remember this one time that I had allowed anger to, show up. I was 12, I think.
Okay.
And I got in a free Walkman from Sam's Club with a microwave purchase.
All right.
And I remember it stopped working. And I still, to this day, there's only maybe 2 times in my life where anger actually was expressed.
Okay.
I got mad at this Walkman for not working, and I stomped it to pieces. And I just remember. That's
intense.
Yes. I remember looking at it like, I'm going to have to tell my mom about this. Oh no, I messed this up. So that's my funny reminder, like don't stomp the Walkman. Don't go nuts just because something's not working or something's not going your way. And so that's 38 years old. I'm always going back to the 12-year-old that went nuts on a piece of something just because my emotions were out of control. And another time, where my feelings, I was in an abusive marriage, and I was coming to the end of it. And I remember saying to God, so I was including him in this.
Yeah.
I remember saying to God that if this X happens again, if he puts his hands on me again, one of us is going to die, and I'm okay with it being me.
Wow.
That was like my indicator. Mm-hmm. Okay. Your feelings, this is
that's not a good place to be.
Yeah, it's not a good place to be with my feelings. So, even though I didn't execute anything, he's still living. Everybody, he's alive and I'm alive. So, and that happened years ago. But either
not
way,
a true crime podcast,
right? Not at all, not at all. But still, it was my feelings were. I was laying them out in front of God, like, hey, you're gonna have to do something here, or.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty similar to David's whole, knock out their teeth, oh God. Like, I think that there's something to be said about just fully expressing our emotions, even when they're not healthy emotions, even when it's not a good place.
Yeah.
If, and there's a big if there, is if you can recognize that it's not healthy. Like to constantly just be expressing emotions that are unhealthy without ever recognizing how unhealthy they are. But you just kind of go through the cycle of just, I'm just going to express it, and I'm going to express it, and I'm going to express it. I'm never going to get help for it. I'm never going to fix any of it. I'm just going to keep expressing it. I think there's a danger there as well.
Yeah.
But recognizing that you don't have to hide things from God.
At all. And
you can just lay it all out on the table and say, hey, this is how I'm really feeling. And I've done that several times in my life. It's funny, nobody believes me when I say this, but when I played football in high school, my nickname on the field was Smiley. So that's what the coaches called me, because I never smiled through my entire time in high school football. I was the kid on the field with a chip on his shoulder. Like I wanted to hurt somebody, and it was like this was the legal way that I could hurt someone without getting in trouble. And so, but that was I walked through the school just angry. Which is funny to think of my life now, because anger has no place in anything that I do. Yeah. So nobody believes it. They're like, but you're always smiling. But back then it was literally I was just angry all the time. Some of it came from bullying that happened when I was younger, before I had my growth spurt, and there was just a lot of just insecurities that. Instead of dealing with those emotions of insecurity and all that, instead of dealing with it or working through it, I just got angry. So I'd punch things, I'd hit things. My knuckles were almost always scarred, scraped, bloodied. And it was just such an unhealthy place to be. But I don't think I was until I was 18, 19 years old that I started to actually recognize how bad that was in that season of my life. But yeah, it's man, maybe we can just talk about that for a second. The stigma for guys, especially, that we're not allowed to feel any emotion except for anger. Like it's the okay one for guys, but you can't feel sadness. Like you can't cry, you can't show any kind of other emotion about anything. If you show too much love, you're sappy. If you show too much sadness, you're weak. And it's so sad that we live in a world where that's still prevalent in a lot of cultures, where it's still the thing where guys are trained and guys are taught, don't feel the feelings, bottle it up, put it aside. Real men don't cry. Real men don't do that. Real men don't do this. And doing whatever I can in this stage of my life to teach my kids a different way. And sometimes it's hard because my oldest son is such an opposite to me. Where I grew up not feeling the feelings, he's growing up feeling all of the feelings. To what we've identified, sometimes it's like in an unhealthy way, and so we've got to work with him and talk with him a lot on getting healthy expression of those emotions. But I really do want to encourage my kids to grow up in a society where it's okay to recognize emotions in your life. But you got to know what to do with them. Yeah. And really, I think that's. I would love to get kind of your thoughts on when you start feeling those emotions that are maybe unhealthy in the way you're feeling, or it's getting too much, whether it be anger or sadness, because, anger can quickly turn to rage. Sadness can quickly turn to depression. And so while the sadness is not a problem, the depression is. And while the anger isn't always a problem, the rage absolutely is. And so how do you process emotions in a healthy way, in the right way, so they don't, like we said before, kind of take over in the driver's seat?
Yeah. First, if I can, back to what you were saying about men expressing their emotions. As women, we need men to express feeling, or to have feelings and emotions, because it helps us remember that we're not alone in all of ours, in all of our expressions and all of our feelings. So, men, we need you. We need that. We need that to
feel the feelings.
Yeah, feel the feelings
and express them.
Yes, in healthy ways. However that looks. Going back to your question, I think when I feel whether it is anger, not so much, but I'm probably, because of my family, I believe in breaking generational curses, but I have to realize that the depression runs in my family, in the women. And so when knowing that, and then also believing God that he's a part of this as well, when I start to feel the sadness, it's like I track patterns for myself. Okay, so what do I normally do when I start to feel sadness, or when it's possibly tipping into the depression or seasonal depression? So I'll track my patterns, and then I have confidants, or I have friends who I will intentionally reach out to, like, hey, I might need you to check on me just a little bit more right now. I'm starting to feel a certain way. I don't know if it's this or if it's this, but based on my patterns and some of my habits, here's what I'm doing. So I need you to pray for me, to cover me, to,
there's trends that happen.
Yes. Sure.
When you recognize, okay, these are the emotions that I regularly deal with. Here's kind of the cause and effect. Like, when I start feeling that feeling, it affects me in this area.
Sure.
So for some, it's like when the sadness starts turning to depression, it's like, I used to wake up at 6 a.m. to go to the gym, but anytime I'm starting to battle with depression, I notice I skip the gym routine.
Right.
And so that's an effect that's caused by the swing. What does that look like for you? Like, what are some of the indicators that are like, my emotion is getting out of control? So, like, for me personally, while you're thinking about it, like, one of my indicators is the patience level I have with my kids. Like, when I'm stressed at work, or when I'm trapped in an emotion that's unhealthy, a lot of times, that could be just discouragement or whatever. I'll notice that I'll keep it together at work, but then I get home and my kids will push my buttons a little bit easier than on other days. And so, like, I'll have to kind of recognize, oh man, I was really short with my kid. But I don't think I was short with my kid because of what my kid was just doing. There's a deeper problem going on. And so I'll use that as kind of the indicator of saying, okay, what's going on? What have I been bottling up? What have I not really been dealing with? Because I don't want it to spill over into these other areas of my life. I need to deal with it, because my kids still need me to be a good dad, even if I'm having a bad day.
So it's unique for me because I'm single with no kids. So sometimes when I start to feel whatever downward spiral, which into whatever emotion, I'll recognize I'm on my phone too much.
Okay.
And my brain will be telling me, get off your phone, but I just can't. I have to keep scrolling. I will feel this wrestle inside of me, like, put your phone down. And the other part of me is like, no, it's like the good little angel in the devil. Like, no, stay distracted. So there's a reason why. There's like, maybe it's my spirit is telling me, you need to put your phone down and focus. I'll fight that way. The second way is, outside of my normal cleaning schedule at home, I will start to clean insanely.
Okay.
So I will grab trash bags and just start throwing things away.
Interesting.
And so if you ever come to my house on a Tuesday night and it's immaculate, I'm going through
You're having a rough week.
Yeah.
It's funny because I would expect for a lot of people, it's probably the exact opposite, right? Like, if the house is a mess, it's probably because my life is a mess. But for you, if the house is clean,
immaculate, yeah, on a Tuesday. So on Saturdays, that's normal cleaning day. But if it's clean on a Tuesday, sit down and ask me some questions.
Interesting.
And then the third thing is spending. Sometimes I'll spend emotionally, and I won't realize it until the package comes. I'll be like, ooh.
Yeah. Thanks for saying that, because now I got to check my Amazon shopping history,
know.
because I think that I've definitely done that. I know I've done that. Sol and I, we've purchased a big old TV because it was like, man, life sucks right now. Like there's all kinds of issues, but I can watch my shows in 4K. Let's do it. Like, yeah.
Those are three big things for me.
Okay. I love too what you said about the phone. Just you're looking for a distraction, because I think ultimately that's what all of these things are. They're distractions. Like I don't want to deal with this thing. This thing is overwhelming me. So what can I do to distract myself from it? And if that means scrolling through Instagram, if that means, binging a show on Netflix, if that, whatever that looks like, if that, for some, that may be, shopping like crazy. But it's anything. It's like, I don't want to focus on this thing that's a problem right now. So I'll focus on anything else. Yeah. And so we recognize the unhealthy thing. What's the healthy thing? What's the good thing? So now that we've kind of identified, and I think for everybody listening, their indicators are going to be different.
Sure.
But you know what they are. Yeah. Like if you are even moderately self-aware, you know what your indicators are. And so when those lights start flashing, when that light comes on, hey, there's check engine, there's trouble. What do? How do you bounce back?
Oh, Pastor Chris said it on Sunday. Worship. That is my go-to. It's been my covering since I met Christ, 18 years old in Akron, in Akron, Ohio. It is the one thing that I would say centers me and stabilizes, because I can be quick to, even when I was in prayer this morning, I was saying to God, I had this hand gesture in front of me. It felt like there were a bunch of pieces and they were like in a whirlwind. I'm like, okay, God, I need you to still all these pieces. Like you've got the pieces. I just need you to still them. So I took some time to worship, and I would probably say maybe 2 minutes. I was like, oh, well, God, you did exactly that. While I was focusing on you, you took care of me. So that worship is my biggest thing. And then also accountability. So in the natural sense, when my healthy habit is, hey, I'm having this problem, I'm going to tell the person I don't want to tell, because they're going to hold me accountable to it. They're going to check up on me and make sure things are, remain good or are getting better. As long as I'm trending up, that's the goal. So those are my two big.
Yeah, I'm with you on both of those. I love what Pastor Chris said about prayer and worship. Like she'll pray about her problem, and she can snot all over the floor and have an intense prayer session, get up and feel the exact same way she did before, but she's never experienced a time of worship where she didn't leave changed. Right. And it's the same thing for me. Like I've it's probably shocking to hear a pastor say it, but I've had prayer sessions where it's like I was just talking to the wall. Like, God, I didn't feel like you were listening to a word that I just said. I've been sitting here talking for 30 minutes, and it's like I'm just talking to an empty room. But I've never had that moment in worship. Right. Never had that experience in worship. It's like when we put God first, when we exalt Him, man, things change. And even if it's not a permanent fix to the problem, it gives me the peace and the clarity to be able to actually deal with the issue. And so absolutely worship is right there. For me, the other thing, kind of like what you talked about, is just talking. I process through talking. And so, which is really weird for me, because as an introvert, I used to not want to talk at all. Right. But I've kind of gotten to this place where it's like, okay, if I'm dealing with something, I need to express it. I need to get it out there. And so I've got a handful of people that when I'm facing an issue, they're the ones that I go to. And they're the ones I'll talk through it with. Outside of that, I've got other things that I'll do. I wish I could say that I work out when I'm feeling that, because I know that that's one of the things that I need to be doing. And there was a time in my life where I did. Like if it was a stressful day or whatever, I'd go for a run or whatever. Sadly, I'm not in that habit right now. I need to get back into that routine. Sadly, instead of that routine, my other routine is playing video games. Like it's just sometimes like it's funny. Like my wife will even just look at me and she's like, you probably need to go sit on the couch for a little bit. Like, and it's one of those things where I can turn off the part of my brain that's that's struggling,
Yeah.
and just for a moment. Now, there's a really unhealthy thing that some people do where they'll go to that video game for way too long, and that's the only outlet that they'll have, and that just becomes a coping mechanism. That just
Sure.
becomes a distraction. But if it's like for an hour, I need to shut this off for 1 hour, play that video game, turn it off, and then go talk about it. And that's, for me, that's the process.
Yeah.
Like, okay, go to worship, use something as a distraction, maybe watch a show, play a game with my family, play a video game, do whatever, then talk it out.
Right.
And I need that talk it out just to be able to feel like, okay, I know what the problem is. I know what the solution is.
Yeah.
I need help getting there because it's not easy, but at least I know a direction I need to run in. Cool.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay, so I had one kind of final thought, and then I want to see if you've got anything to add as well. I was listening to a Chris Hodges message a few days ago, based off of the book that he wrote a couple years ago, Out of the Cave. So if you're battling with depression, highly recommend the book. It's an amazing book. But he talks about in both scripture, and he uses Elijah's story. It's where Out of the Cave comes from. So Elijah has, actually Pastor Chris talked on it on Sunday, but Elijah has this amazing moment. God shows up, miracles happen, and then he gets afraid of the repercussions of that, goes into a deep depression, wants to die, goes off in hiding. I love that God restores him by giving him a snack and telling him to take a nap.
Yeah.
Like, that's just, come on, Jesus. Like, God just loves us so much. Sometimes he gives us a snack and tells us to take a nap. Like, it's beautiful. Yeah, take a nap, get a snack, move on. My wife said that she has the spirit of Elijah on her because of that. But so then he is finally able to come out of the cave. But in talking about that, so Scripture describes it and psychology describes it now, that there is the right way to build our emotions. That it's kind of like building a house, that you have to have a strong foundation, then you have to have the support structure, and then you get to decorate it.
Yeah.
And each of those elements are present in how we process emotions and how we deal with those things. And so for that foundation, it really starts relationally. That the strongest foundation for our emotions is built on having healthy relationships and being connected to people. And so, like for me, I know that when those relationships are being attacked, that's when my emotions have the biggest problem. And when I isolate, that's when my emotions cause the biggest damage. It's like if I'm feeling sadness and I isolate, that sadness will turn to depression. If I'm feeling angry and I isolate, that'll turn into rage. If I'm feeling jealousy, man, and I isolate, that thing just gets out of control and it'll put me into a horrible cycle. And so isolation is the most dangerous thing, I think, when any of us are feeling any of the feelings. Isolation is bad. The sad part is, the danger is that for a lot of people, they're feeling the feelings because they're isolated, and not by choice. It's like, well, I used to go to this person, that person betrayed me. I used to go to this person, you went through an ugly divorce.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you do when what's supposed to be the strong foundation has all of a sudden it's gotten cracks in it? And so as we kind of talk through each of these building components, I want to just settle right there for a second. When building that strong foundation on connectedness and relationship, what have you found to be kind of I don't know, your method that's helped you? You've moved around a few times to places where you had no connection, no relationship. So you get to a new city and you're like, okay, I need a foundation. I need a connect. What do you do?
So my pastor in Ohio he ingrained in us, his name's Micah Pelkey. He said life moves at the speed of relationships. So that being in my head, everywhere that I go, I know that the right relationships will move me forward. And then I also know that the not so good relationships can keep me stuck. So the goal is to always be in right relationship with the right people. And so even moving to a new city, I have a slower pace when it comes to building relationships, but which is typical for an introvert. Sure. So what I'll do is, when I recognize maybe this is a person that could be a part of, maybe a tribe, I guess. We'll say tribe. It's almost like I give them a morsel. Okay.
Test the waters.
Yeah. Let me see what you do with this.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I'll see if they reciprocate and give me a piece of theirs. Like, you know, it's not always that it's going to be a two-way. Sometimes it's they're in my life to pour into me. Yeah. And sometimes we pour into each other, and sometimes I'm there to pour. Yeah. So it's determining what type of relationship that is. But let me see what you do with this morsel. Okay. You handled that well. Let me give you a couple more pieces. Yeah. Let me see what you do with this. And then it slowly starts to build on that, like how you handle the little parts of me. So that's my foundation for how to build relationships. Yeah. Yeah. Healthy ones.
Take it kind of one little step at a time.
One step at a time.
Kind of don't just vomit emotion onto somebody that you just met. Probably not a healthy way to go about.
No, you'll turn people away that way.
Yeah, a little bit.
Especially guys.
Right. I would imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think one of the dangers with COVID that happened was the social distancing. Was this isolation for people, and it really damaged the connectedness for a lot of relationships. And so now, a few years out of this thing, trying to rebuild those relationships, rebuild that connectedness, I think a lot of people have kind of not taken that step yet. So there's a lot of people that are still just in a virtual world, and they haven't allowed people into their life in a way that's healthy. And so you may be listening to this right now, and you're kind of in this place where emotions are getting out of control, and you're getting into a dangerous place, and it is because you haven't reconnected. And I think it's past time for some people to reconnect. And I know that can be a scary process, especially if you're in a new place. But the danger of not doing it far outweighs the dangers of, putting yourself out there. And so definitely want to encourage you. The foundation for healthy, strong emotions is to have connectedness, have relationships. So then we put up the walls, and Chris Hodges breaks it down as, the walls in the house are built off of purpose and routine. And I love that because for me personally, purpose is my drive. It's the thing that gets me up in the morning. It's the thing that I can feel like I'm running into a brick wall a million times in a row, but as long as I know that there's a purpose behind it, I'll keep running. And so usually for me, when I start feeling depression or discouragement or any other emotion start to kind of creep into that driver's seat, when I'm reminded of purpose, it puts me in a healthier place. It's kind of like my wife and I, we joke about the fact that we can go through any kind of marital problem and come out fine because we both know we're supposed to be together. Like the miracles that God worked just to bring us together, to keep us together, to bring us into the same country. Like there's just so many things that it was like God's hand was on it here, and here. Yeah. That we've gotten to this place where it's like, man, we could face anything. And because we know we're supposed to be together, we can face it. So for me, like as a pastor, I can face any kind of opposition, any kind of discouragement, any kind of problem in pastoring because it ain't easy. Right. And I can still come out on top because I know this is what God's called me to. I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And so when you can lead in a place of purpose, I think it does help you have stronger emotional skills for how to deal with things, how to process things. Definitely. For somebody that maybe they're working in a field or they're doing something and they're like, I'm just paying the bills. Like, I know this isn't my purpose. I'm just trying to survive. What would you say to them to try and encourage them to find purpose? And it's interesting because I don't think a lot of people would put, this emotional conversation into the realm of purpose, but they really are connected. A lot of times when people lose their sense of purpose, that's when suicide comes into play. So how do you help somebody find purpose?
One, I think you can look at just natural giftings. You can look at a natural lean, things that you love, and it could also go back to just like the people that you're surrounded by. I remember thinking that I wasn't living in purpose. I was working in telecommunications. Okay. Just at the phone company, clocking in, clocking out, hated it. And I was on the other side of a cubicle was somebody new, and years later, this is a decade after the company dissolved the department we were working in, and I was working actually in full-time ministry in Ohio. A woman started coming to the church who had worked on the other side of the cubicle. And she said, it was the conversations with you
Wow.
that encouraged me. And she stayed at the church because I was there. And then I had years prior, and I'm thinking I'm clocking in, hating the job, but I'm having conversations that are helping build her faith.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes purpose can be so big in our heads, and we could think that it's something massive and that it's unattainable in certain aspects. If we can do it without God, it's, maybe not calling, if we can accomplish it without God's help.
Yeah.
But like day-to-day purpose, it's not big or massive. It's in the mundane. It's in playing the quality time with kids. It is, I haven't called my friend that lives in another state in a little while. And it'll just even years now, just being healthy in healthy relationships.
Yeah.
It's friends realizing or coming back and saying, thank you for that time when you showed up.
Yeah.
So I think that is a part of my purpose. Not necessarily this, this big, massive thing. I think in the mundane is where we are most effective.
Yep. When God can use you wherever you are and whatever you're doing, it's perfect. We call this podcast Between Sermons, and our next sermon is on faith in the workplace.
Sure, yeah.
And so what does that look like when you take your relationship with God into a place of business, when you take it into your 9 to 5? And so, I love that. I think Pastor Chris described it as finding purpose in your pain.
Yeah.
And that you're going through a painful emotion, but there can be purpose found in it. There can be purpose found through it. And even if there isn't purpose in it, there's purpose after it, that God's not done with you. And so you got to get through this thing so that you can keep moving forward in what God has called you to. Yeah. So I love that purpose. This idea of routine, it's so beneficial. I think that a lot of people would benefit more in their life if they created a routine and followed it. And I think a lot of people run into issues and stressors in their life because they don't have routine. Or, for some, it's a good indication. At least for me, it's a good indication. When I'm out of routine, it means that there's something out of balance in my life. Yeah. And I've let something creep in that I shouldn't allow. And so I don't know if you're a big routine person or not, but routines can kind of make or break kind of this framework of our healthy emotions.
I am an avid gym goer.
Okay.
Yes, I may not look like it, but if you look at pictures before, I look like it. So being consistent at the gym, even though my schedule week to week isn't, it is showing up is important. To me, that's big. I notice that my brain is my fogginess returns when I don't have the routine of going to the gym. And then also I have 2 set days that I do like the long worship at home. So, and devotion. So my Saturday mornings and then my Monday evenings are dedicated to, whether it's listening to a message. So sometimes so Saturdays get me ready for Sundays, and then Mondays restore me from Sundays.
Yeah, no, I get that.
That makes sense.
That. When you're working in ministry, Sunday that's a big day.
And so my Monday through Friday still has devotion and prayer time. It's just really intentional on Saturdays and Monday nights. And I notice if I miss it. Oh, yeah. Like it is, I'm so sorry, God. But I feel that emptiness, what it does, being in the Word, and then sealing it with worship. That is like my routine on Saturdays and Mondays. So I'm good. Like I can tell through my whole Monday through Friday, through that whole week, I did good Monday night, or I did good, Saturday. That was a powerful time in worship at the house by myself. And it impacts my entire week.
I love it. Yeah, literally growing up, I heard my mother not frequently, but several times look at my father and say, "You haven't read your Bible today, have you?" Because he got a little snippy with something, or he wasn't quite in the right headspace, and she would just look at him and be like, "You didn't read your Bible today, did you?" And he's like, "No, not yet." And like it really does have an effect. It does. And what's scary about that is if you don't see the effect of it, it's because you haven't had enough of it. You don't feel the withdrawal of it if you never had it to begin with. Right. And so creating that routine of getting into Scripture, getting into worship, getting that quiet time with God, man, it's so vital. It really does make a huge difference in impact in how we handle these emotions. So if you want to have healthy emotions, I mean, Jesus said in Matthew, like the wise builder built his house on the strong foundation, and the winds came and the storms came and the water rose, but the house stood its ground. And so what that means to me is that when we build this emotional house on a strong foundation with good supports, then when the stuff comes, because life happens to all of us, the rain falls on the just and the unjust
That's
alike.
right.
Like we all go through trials and tribulations and turmoil and just bad days and all of it. The house that stands strong is the one that's got that foundation, that's built up that strong framework. And then we just get to decorate the house. And that's when those emotions, you can feel them and you can process through them, and it's healthy, and it's usually done quickly. You know, you don't really battle these 3-week or 3-month or 3-year long battles of depression, because like, look, I got my strong foundation. I know what I've built my life on. I've got the right relationships. We're connected in the right ways. I've got this framework of purpose and of routine, and I've got all of this in place. So now when I feel the feelings, I can process through it. And so that's what the goal is. That's where I think the healthy process for emotions comes in.
I agree.
The question is, how do you get there? And if for somebody that's listening right now that says, you know what, my foundation sucks, my walls are in tatters, I don't even know where to begin. Like, what would be your encouragement to somebody that's like, look, I've recognized that I'm in a place of depression. I recognize that right now I've allowed an emotion, whatever that emotion is, drive. What's the starting point? What's kind of your closing thought of, hey, if this is you right now, here's where you start.
Yeah, start with prayer. And it is not having the right words. I don't know if there's such a thing as having the right words. It could be something as simple as saying, God, help.
Yeah.
And the Bible tells us to cast our cares on him. And so we can do that. And he is not intimidated by our emotions, by what we're feeling, what we're going through. There's not one that we can't take to him. He can handle all of them. He can handle our anger. He can handle our emotions that are towards him. Maybe it's, you know, maybe you're mad at God about something.
That's very real.
Yeah, he can handle that too. So the real, like, knowing that God hears you, going in with confidence, God, here's where I'm at, and here's where I need you, and I'm giving you these emotions. I think that is the best starting point. And then getting connected to a body of believers who can begin holding you accountable. You know, if it's downloading the YouVersion app and it's sending you a verse a day, just letting the word slowly start to feed you. It's a great starting place.
Beautiful. I couldn't have said it better myself. That's if we can start with God. You start with God, then get connected to the right people. And the right people for you may be to go see a counselor. Maybe to call your doctor and just say, hey, I've been battling this thing for way too long. I don't know. I may need medication. Can you help me navigate that? But having the right people, oh, man, it's so pivotal. Start with God, get connected to the right people, create a routine in your life, spend some time in worship, and you got this. You'll be all right. All right.
You can do it.
Hey. There's always hope, right?
There is, always.
That's the beautiful thing. All right. Well, thank you so much, Kristin, for hanging out. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Between Sermons. We hope to see you again next week. God bless.